So in a little bit of review from prior math classes, I believe in grade 9 you would have done some of this here, we're going to take a look at how do we plot points on the graph and then how do we use that to create a linear function. So let's do a little bit of recap first. Number one, a graph always consists of two different variables. One of them is what we call the dependent variable, and the other one is the independent variable. Now, based on the names, you can probably understand what dependent and independent mean. Okay? Dependent means that it is dependent on something else. Just like when you were a young child, you were dependent on your parents. Okay? You were dependent because they had to, or parents or guardians or whatever it was. Okay? You were dependent on them because you needed their help for, buying food, changing your diaper way back in the day. I have a young son. I'm kind of used to this right now. Okay, he's very dependent on me. He needs me and my wife to be there to help him. If it wasn't for the two of us, he would not survive. Now, my wife and me are very independent. We can survive without. Okay, we don't need my son to survive. Okay, my son needs us to survive. So those are the two kind of variables. And when we talk about different variables in a question, we're going to look at what's independent and what's dependent. Now, our independent variable, okay, is located on the horizontal axis. Okay, so think of an XY axis. Okay, and if this helps you here, I'll just draw one out. You might remember this from prior classes, and we're going to dive into it a little bit more so. Okay, so there's our XY axis. This horizontal axis represents the independent variable. Now, that's usually X. Okay, we're usually going to base it on X. X is independent. It doesn't depend on what Y does. It's always just independent on its own, especially when you get to contextual problems. Okay, this is usually the one that is changing, okay, and will help determine the other variable. Okay, one of the things that we can think of as being independent is time. Okay, time is always independent. It keeps on going forever and ever. It is not affected by what we do. What we do is often affected by time. Okay, so what we do would be dependent and time would be independent because it has no dependence on us. Now on the other side, the dependent variable, okay, is affected by the value of the independent variable, okay, as the independent variable adjusts. Okay, so as time goes, okay, something else in our lives will adjust accordingly. Maybe it's how far you've driven. The longer the period of time, the farther you will have driven. Okay, the amount that you've driven is your dependent variable. So the dependent variable will change in relation to it. Okay, and the independent, I need to correct this here. There's a typo already. The dependent variable is located on the vertical axis. Okay, so the dependent variable is located on the vertical axis. Now, as seen with our previous example that we took a look at, okay, so this one right here with our arm span and our height, the height, okay, is our independent variable. Okay, so how tall you are is going to be considered an independent variable, as the arm span is related somewhat to the height that you are. Okay, somewhat. Now, the origin, you may have heard of that before, is located where both variables equal 0. Okay, this is the point 0, 0. Okay, it's usually at the bottom corner of it or right in the middle. So if you look at this little thing here, that little thing where both of them equal 0 is going to be our origin, and we're going to deal with that as well. Now, the final little thing there is that every point on the graph will be given some address, okay, or location. And we have a name for this, okay, and we call it a coordinate point. This is the location of any point on the graph. Okay? The coordinate point will always be given in the following manner. it will be the independent value first and the dependent value second. So when we see something like this, 0, 0, that means that the independent value is 0 as well as the dependent value is 0. And this is the way that we would show our coordinate point. We could also think of it as our x value and then our y value. Which x value do we have? Which y value do we have? And so this is how we would describe our each coordinate point. Okay, so with whatever the values are, that would be our coordinate point. That is the location of our point on the graph.